Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thank you.
Now, my favorite question to start off with is, what is your sober date?
Uh, July 4th, 2022.
Oh wow, so you decided to quit on a holiday.
It was not planned. I feel like I had a discussion with the devil on one side and an angel on another side, and God
Well,
put me to sleep.
let me ask you my second favorite question is what was going on July 3rd of 2022?
Well, it started on July 2nd of
Okay.
2022. I went on a big drinking binge and I didn't go to sleep until July 3rd.
and
Yeah.
then you woke up with the devil and the angel on each shoulder.
No, before I went to sleep, I contemplated accidentally overdosing on my prescribed migraine medicine to make my death look like an accident,
I've done that.
and
I
I
was
didn't.
picking out trees, Chris, that I was going to drive into in the rain and make it look like a car accident. That was at the end of my run with opiates. I was so done with opiates and I couldn't do it anymore. And I was finding, and then I started driving with my dog in my car at all times
Oh,
because I knew I would never hurt my dog. So
oh,
I that's my way of talking myself out of going off the road is my poor dog in the back seat, my innocent dog. I don't want to hurt
right.
her. So I would always bring, even if I was going to get cigarettes, I would say, "Come on, Zoe, going for a ride," and she'd be all excited. She'd hop in the back seat, and she loved car rides. So, and she still does. My mom, she lives with my mom now,
Oh,
and my mom's got. I live in an apartment. My mom's got a big backyard with a fence, so she can run around. So
nice.
I don't want to coop her up in the apartment. She's 12 now, almost 13.
Yeah,
But yeah,
that's
she
that's
saved
good.
my life. She saved my life. You know,
Yeah,
it sounds like you were about to do the same thing. You were planned, an overdose.
yeah. I thought if my roommate would find me and my family would be like, "Oh, poor Chris accidentally drank too much and accidentally swallowed too many of her pills. That poor girl." I was a victim of my own circumstances for so long. And,
Yeah,
I woke up on July 3rd later that day and I didn't take any of the pills. And I thought, this might be a chance, and I knew something had to change at that moment. And I sat in that room for 3 more days. I didn't call anybody. I isolated. I sipped on the same top ramen for 3 days, vomiting. It was horrible. And so I finally realized that I knew somebody that had some sober time, and I reached out to them.
and you got into a fellowship from there.
Yes, yes, I was invited to my friend's house for the weekend. I lived in the Inland Empire at the time, and she invited me down to Orange County. And she said, "Let me show you what I've been doing to keep sober the past 13 years." It was 13 years at the time. She just took 15 years last weekend. And she said, let me show you how we do. And so they took me to meeting at 6 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, like 50 happy people. And I was like, I'm not joining this cult. No
Yeah,
way. And people just put their arms around me and invited me to stay and observe and suggested different things to me, like sober living. And I knew I needed some accountability because left to my own vices, I was going to go right back to doing what I'd been doing. And I lost family members. My kids didn't want to talk to me as often. I didn't have two nickels to rub together. And every $100 I got, I spent 150 in the bar.
yep, that easy.
It was that easy.
Southern California has some amazing recovery. Um,
Yes.
Towards the end of my run, I was watching a documentary called Legend of 420. I was a pothead,
Hmm.
um, on top of a pill head, on top of an alcoholic. I wore many hats. And I was watching a documentary on 420 called Legend of 420. And there was a bunch of different segments about cannabis being a medicine and this, that, and the third. And one of the segments was a rehab in Los Angeles called High Sobriety. where it taught you how to use cannabis to get off opiates. And for the first time in a decade, I said to myself, that's a rehab I would go to. You know what I mean? And then the next day, was a horrible day for me. And I Googled the phone number at 8 o'clock at night on a Saturday, and someone answered. And he talked to me for 2 hours. 5 o'clock in LA, he answered, talked to me for 2 hours like I'd never been talked to before. I felt
Wow.
heard for the first time. And I flew out on April 5th, 25th, and I haven't touched an opiate since. And
Amazing.
I loved LA. I came back because I had a business with my dad and my brother, and I missed working with my dad and my
Yeah.
brother. We were a fun trio. And
Yeah.
we had fun at work, and I missed, my dad passed away last year, and I knew that he, the way he was going, it could happen anytime, and I wanted to spend as much time as possible with him. So I left LA and came back to Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Now, you're born and raised in Southern California?
Yes, yes. I was born in Washington, but my parents brought me out here as an infant, so I've been in Southern California my whole life.
Now, are you part of the where you're beautiful weather?
Yeah, it's a cool, 65 degrees right now, but the sun's shining and blue skies everywhere.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Did you have any brothers or sisters?
Oh, I do. So my dad is remarried of almost 40 years. So I have two amazing a stepbrother, a stepsister. I have one same mother, same father sibling, and I have two half sisters from my mom's side.
So your parents split up after they came to California?
Yes, I think I was 7 or 8 years old when they finally did the final split. It was growing up. It was every year and a half to 2 years, my dad moved my brother and I out of the house and over to grandma's. We went and they would get back together, and it was a pretty toxic environment. My mom, suffered from alcoholism and pills, and she had a rough life, and she just never addressed it. And unfortunately, she passed away at a young age of 57.
Yeah. Yeah, that's young. I'm sorry to hear that, because you never want to have to see your parent. Like right now, I'm looking in my office. I have a whole shrine of my dad, who,
Yeah,
stuff he had in his office, his watch that he wore when he was in the casket. I have his ashes. I have a whole little thing. So I constantly look at him, when I'm talking about him. And, it's a shame. He was only 60.
yeah, young.
So he was young, and, he had colon cancer, stage
Oh,
4.
sorry.
So it took him within a year of being diagnosed. So, that was, I relapsed after that. I didn't know how to handle that. How did you handle your mom?
Well, I didn't think I was an alcoholic at the time. So I wasn't my mom's next of kin, so I had to make the emergency medical decision for her to have bypass surgery. So she was in Laughlin, Nevada, with her friend at the time, and they called me and said that they needed me to make a decision, but they had to stabilize her first because she thought she was having flu-like symptoms. And her friend contacted me and said, "Hey, convince your mom to go to the emergency room. She's just something's not right." So her friend drove her to the emergency room in Laughlin, Nevada, and this is in November of 2007. And so her friend went to go move her car, and by the time she came back in to the emergency area, my mom was nowhere to be found. And so she called me and she was like, "They won't give me any information. You have to call and find out what's going on." So I was in Orange County, California, which is about, 5 hours away. And I'm calling, and they said, "I'm sorry, we can't give you any information at the time." And then a nurse did call me back and inform me that once they stabilize her, they would be able to give me more information, but we had to develop a password. And I was like, okay. So hours later, they contacted me and said, "We have your mom, Gloria, here stabilized, and we need to develop a very quick password." So automatically, I just said my name. My birth name is Christina. I said, "Mom, the password's Christina. Say my name twice." And she did. And they the doctor got on the phone and he said, your mom suffered a massive heart attack and we need your consent to do surgery, but we have to get her more stable and lifeline her to Las Vegas. I was like, okay, well, what are the chances? And I had been up all night drinking. I bartended the night before, but here I am feeling like daughter of the year because I get to make these decisions. That was my mindset at that
Yeah.
time of my life.
Yeah.
And so I asked the doctor, I said, well, what are her chances of survival? And he said, right now you're looking at about 50-50. I said, okay, well, do it. Yeah, I consent to the surgery. When should I get on the road to Las Vegas? And he said, once we get her to the hospital and in surgery, staff will contact you. I said, okay. So I called my friend, the one that just took 15 years of sobriety, and I ran to her house and I said, I need you to go on a road trip with me, like immediately. And she threw on some clothes and we waited for the phone to ring. And what should have been about a 4.5 hour drive, I did in 2 hours and 45 minutes. I drove like 95. I made my friend urinate in a Gatorade bottle, and we smoked like 3 packs of cigarettes in that 2 hours and 45 minutes. Yeah, we checked in at the hospital, and a nurse came to the window, and she said, "Wait right here. They're bringing your mom into recovery, and we'll come get you." So we're standing there anxiously waiting, and we saw a lot of staff just running on that floor frantically, and we thought, "Oh wow, that poor person, whatever's going on." And we're holding hands, and it seemed like an hour, but it was probably minutes. That same nurse came and she grabbed my hands and she said, Christina, you need to come say goodbye to your mother. And I was just immediately just in shock, I guess. So they walked me to the room, and in the room, I'm looking at a room where it looked like it was out of a movie, like a murder scene, like her.
I've seen Grey's Anatomy.
Okay, her heart exploded
Oh,
after they got her in, and I walked into the room with the heart explosion all over the walls. Like there was no cleanup.
yeah.
And I immediately, broke down and cried. And I see my dead mother with an open, exploded heart, and I was, in shock. And the first thing I knew to do was I have to go call my dad. And my dad and my birth mother didn't speak more than 2 words in over 30 years. And I called him and I was like, Dad, she's dead. And they're asking me where to send her and what to do and how to do it. And my dad just like jumped into play over on the other end of the phone. And he was like, oh, send her to this mortuary. I'm going to call them. We'll set up a cremation. And, your phone's going to start ringing and you just have to answer it. And they're going to just try to stay calm. And I was just like, okay, because my dad was the only person who ever put any fear in me of like when he spoke, I listened.
Yeah.
So, I went back in there and they, I told them everything my dad told me. And, it just seemed like I'm just staring in this room out of a murder scene. And we went with the phlebotomist that I was actually carrying blood to try to revive my mother happened to be a woman that my friend knew from her drinking shenanigans in Las Vegas. She said, I want you guys to go to my house. And when I get off work, I'll explain everything. And so we did that. And, that later that night, we went back to Orange County, and that, that's where my drinking career started off like off the rails of a deep end. For months, if I closed my eyes, I saw my dead mother and the heart all over the walls. And Captain Morgan became my numbing agent.
Yeah. Captain Morgan would do that.
Yeah, I had always been a drinker. I hung out with the boys, the
I was
Marines.
going to ask, when did you start drinking?
My birth mother used to make Kahlua. So when I was like in first and second grade, I would come home from school and she would say, "Oh, I have a fresh batch. You have to taste it." So I got my first taste of alcohol at age 6.
Okay. You are one. No, you're out of like, I've done almost 250 of these, and only like a handful of people have told me under. I was 11 when I
Okay.
discovered alcohol, and only a handful of people are younger than me, and you're one. You're one of them.
Yeah.
Speaking of parents, my dad loved Kahlua. People got him Kahlua for Christmas in his office all the time. He had, and my dad wasn't a drinker. My dad never really drank. My parents knew how to throw a party, and so they always had liquor, and then all the leftover liquor would go in our basement and just
Uh-huh.
stored away for the next party. So I would go down there, and my first drink was Captain and Coke because I saw my parents and other people mixing them together at parties.
Yeah.
So I figured that's got to be good. I like Coca-Cola. And my friend and I, when he would sleep over, we would watch movies. To watch like The Outsiders was a staple in our house that we watched every time, and we would drink and think we were cool like those guys. And when I was 12, I started drinking alcoholically. That's, when I was 12, I was getting bullied a lot, in school.
Uh-huh.
So I stole a bottle of liquor and I would have it in my room and I would hide it and then take sips. I would smoke cigarettes out my window when I was 13,
Yes.
and all that kind of shit. So
Yep.
you're 6 years old, you discover Kahlua. When do you start drinking on your own?
Uh, age 10. My
Okay.
my mom and dad were divorced, and my mom had married a very wealthy man that I later found out was one of the largest cocaine dealers in Southern California. Yeah, this guy had so much money. I thought he was the coolest guy. He was did, like blueprints for construction, always in the garage. And he just shilled out money to her. So we would go to their house every other weekend. And my mom would always invite me to bring a friend. And so I would bring a friend, and I had a little brother, and she would stop at this liquor store in Costa Mesa. Sadly, I remember the name of the liquor store. And she would pull up and she would tell my friend and I, hey, you guys get 2 2-liter bottles of Bartles and James and 2 packs of cigarettes each for the entire weekend. And we're like, oh, okay. So we would go in and point at the cooler, which ones we wanted, and tell her what kind of cigarettes to get. And at that time, my mom grew marijuana, so we had ungodly, unlimited amounts of marijuana. And so we smoked all the pot. We drank. When we ran out of our Bartles and James, my mom, in the refrigerator in the house, instead of water dispenser, was a wine dispenser. So we knew how to make spritzers. And this was, from Friday until, usually we would stay up like Friday night, all night, drinking, smoking pot, take little naps. And I had 2 older sisters in the house who, hung out. We would go dancing at Knott's Berry Farm. When it was a big thing, you only had to be like 12, and my sisters would dress us up to make us look older, no IDs. And we would drink at Knott's Berry Farm. We would smoke pot, smoke cigarettes. And this was, bi-weekly. And then by the time I was 12, when my dad got remarried, I got so drunk I passed out in the middle of the reception. Um, the alcohol was just, it was a house wedding. The alcohol was, available for everybody. And I just drank so much. I smoked a bunch of pot with a family friend, and we both passed out in my room for hours and nobody even knew. And we woke up and everybody was like, oh, there you are. And we would dance and socialize, and we went right back to drinking. So, it was on at, ages 10, 11, and 12. And by the time
So
I
what
was, go ahead.
you were smoking cigarettes at a young age too.
Yes.
What were you smoking? What kind?
Marlboro Reds to start,
Wow.
Marlboro 100s, the long ones, Marlboro 100s. Yeah, I just quit smoking about, I guess, just under 2 years ago.
It's tough. I'm still smoking. I told my wife by the time I'm 38, and I said by the time I'm 40, I'll be done. My wife
Yeah.
quit. She's 40, and she quit. And just now, recently, we using the nicotine patch.
I do
And
vape. It's 5% nicotine vape. I Later on in the conversation, you'll understand what I've been going through this past year, and I'm not ready to give up the vape yet. It's kind of
yeah,
been my vice, and I haven't had to relapse because I think the vape is keeping it there for me.
The vape is too dangerous for me. I work a stressful job from home, and I
Oh,
feel like if I could smoke whenever I wanted, I would smoke that entire vape in one sitting. Like I've done a lot of 6 hour drives, so I've
yes.
smoked a pack of cigarettes in those 6 hour
Yep.
drives. They keep me awake,
Yes.
and it's funny. My brother never smoked a day in his life, and we did a lot of road trips together, me and him. But he never liked to drive, so I would drive his car, and he would give me one cigarette an hour. That was his rule: one cigarette an hour that I could smoke in his car. And when he would sleep, I would sneak another one in between,
Right.
and, and so yeah, I smoke Marlboro 27s. I've been smoking them since I was a kid.
That's
And
what I was smoking when I quit.
really,
Yes, that's
yeah,
what I went down to because I kept telling people I hate the way cigarettes smell on me, and I wasn't finishing them. And so a friend of mine said, "Oh, why don't you try the 27s?" So I did, and then I just got so tired of the smell of cigarettes on me. And as I got sober, I could smell things different,
yeah,
taste things different, hear and see everything different. So I was like, I want to quit this. And, I was, almost 50 years old. So
yeah,
I'm grateful that I let that go. And, I have goals. Hopefully, 2025, I'll be able to drop the vape.
the vape. I walk into 7-Eleven, and if you buy 2 packs, you get $1.20 off or $1.80 off.
Right.
So I walk into 7-Eleven to get like my Celsius drinks, and they already have my cigarettes on the counter by the time I get there because they know the drill. I come in, and the Celsius drinks are two for $4, so I get four of them, and I get 2 packs of cigarettes, and they know the drill. I'm not every day, but every other day. I
Yeah.
walk in there and I buy more because I like to stock up. I don't want to run out, and have to leave during work to go get them.
Right.
So I like to have
Right.
them deck ready. So you're 10 years old. Where was your dad in this picture when your mom and dad split? And because you were going every other weekend to this guy's house, did
Yes.
you go to your dad?
My dad was a over the road truck driver. So we were living in my grandmother's house, my dad's mom. And so my dad was gone most days and weekends out of the month, just earning a paycheck and doing, the only trade he'd ever known. And so my mom would come to, it was in Orange County, which was, she lived in one city, Costa Mesa, and we lived in Garden Grove. So it's, 30-minute drive. So my mom would come and my grandma would see us off. And, I would come back on Sundays looking like I was drugged through the mud. And just, my mom had a pool. So we always told my grandma, oh, we were, swimming all weekend and we went to Knott's Berry Farm. I'm just tired. I'm just going to go to bed. So my grandma never suspected that, I was partying at
Yeah.
10 years old, 11 years old. But my grandmother, she got a big part of my raising, and, God bless her soul, she passed on. But, she was a big part. She was, the only true mother figure until my stepmother entered my life that ever showed me what consistency as a female in a child's life looked like.
And you started living with your dad and stepmom when your grandma passed.
No, my dad, when I was 11 in two, oh no, I'm sorry, in 1985, I was 11, 1985, my dad and my stepmom got married, and we relocated to the Inland Empire, which is about an hour away from Orange County, and moved in with my stepmom and started, school. I was going into junior high, and I was so mad that my dad was getting married 20 days before my 12th birthday, and I had to go be taken away from everything. So again, I turned to marijuana and alcohol as my coping. You know, my father was the type, the man of very few words. You didn't express your feelings, and if you did express your feelings, you didn't cry. And as a confused adolescent, I didn't know how to express feelings without showing emotion. So I just held it
Yeah.
all in, and I drank and I smoked pot and cigarettes and hung out with the crowd that I thought I was cool.
Pod's such a hard one to break away from, right? It was for me, because like I said, I went to a rehab that, boasted and pride themselves on using cannabis to get over opiates, which it worked. It's what I needed in that moment.
Hmm.
And then I was using it as a medicine for a few years. Even when COVID hit, I quit drinking. I quit drinking February 29th, leap day of 2020,
Wow.
um, which is an awesome sober date because I've never heard anybody have that. And I asked that question, what's your sober date, to every single person,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
not one. So, and the COVID hit 2 weeks later. And my wife and I were like, okay, now we can't go to meetings. It's on us to like do this together. And Zoom meetings weren't really a thing at that time right away. So we bonded together and we got through it and still haven't had a sip of alcohol to this day. And but we use cannabis as a medicine.
Huh.
And my wife has MS. So we both
Oh,
use it as a medicine because it's really tough for MS. And then when my dad passed, I started smoking all day, every day. That was my escape. And I realized that I was escaping with cannabis. And so I gave it up on April 1st of this year.
nice.
And, my wife gave it up October 1st. So we're a
Okay.
cannabis free household now, which is so
Wow.
funny to say. It was funny. A few weeks ago, we live in an apartment complex and the lights are like bolted in and we couldn't get the fixture off to change the light bulb. So
Uh-huh.
we had to call maintenance to come do it. And we're so used to hiding bongs, making sure it doesn't smell, hiding all the paraphernalia, all that kind of stuff, so that if maintenance came at any moment, we're prepped for it.
Right.
And for the first time in years, we could just sit back and wait for maintenance and not worry about a damn thing because we had nothing to hide anymore. And it was just a weird feeling of like satisfaction of look what we did. You know, you know what I mean? So you weren't drinking in school in junior high when you were with your dad and stepmom?
Oh yes, I was holding hotel parties. I got in with crowds, and my dad for the first time and my stepmom, they made a pretty nice income together. And my my life, I was the oldest child out of four at this time, and I got paid a pretty good allowance to help prepare meals and laundry and chores around the house. And they paid me, I feel like it was like $100 a week or something. And they never made me pay because I always say I want to go roller skating. So I would go to these all night roller skatings, and I would take off as soon as I got dropped off, go to parties. And then my dad or my stepmom would come pick me up thinking, oh, she's just at the roller skating rink. She can't get in any trouble. I don't know how I hid it from them, but they didn't know for a long time.
Yeah, sometimes parents, and I'm a parent too, and I'm sure you are too. And
Hmm.
sometimes we're oblivious to what's actually going. We do share custody with our 10-year-old. Right
Hmm.
now, it's the weekend. He's at his dad's, and we co-parent really well with my wife's ex-husband, and but we don't have to worry. He's only 10, and we're like, there's no alcohol in the house. There's no weed in the house. I smoke outside and I always know how many I have. My wife quit smoking the vape, so there's no vapes laying around.
Yeah.
But like my parents didn't know that I drank until I got alcohol poisoning when I was 16.
Oh.
I was in the woods at a party in the woods and I drank a fifth of Bacardio in 10 minutes.
Ooh.
Can't do that.
Oh.
Can't do that. That
No.
should, that should put me into the hospital. And, my dad brought my 13-year-old brother with him to scare him straight. And, you know how the hospitals are usually cold? They're like the air just pumps in the hospitals.
Yes.
And I was laying there drunk. And this was told back to me by my brother and my dad. I don't remember this because I was blacked out. But my arm was touching the rail of the bed, and I was saying, Tim, put my cigarette out. It's burning my arm. And my dad was like, so he smokes too. Like, I got caught for drinking and smoking in the same night.
Oh, wow.
I started smoking at 13, but I always came from like friends' houses that their parents smoked. So every
Yes.
time I'd walk in smelling like cigarettes, it was like, oh, I'm at blah blah blah's house and his parents smoke, and they'd be like, okay, you know
Right.
what I mean? And they wouldn't even question me. So I got away with it for 3 years, and then I was 16, so they weren't really doing shit to stop me because they knew that I was going to do what I was going to do anyway. Because I'm my dad's son, and I'm stubborn like my dad is or
Right.
was. So
Right.
I got away with a lot of stuff. So I could see you escaping, leaving the roller rink to go get drunk and then coming back later to get picked up. And it's the
Yeah.
80s. $100 goes a long way in the 80s.
Well, yes, and they never made me pay to go like roller skating. It was they gave me handed me money out of their pockets or purses every time I went anywhere, and they took me school clothes shopping. I never had to use my allowance. So when I would, dip into my allowance, it was, I had quantity of money in the 80s. So I would host these hotel parties. I had an aunt that was supposed to be like a babysitter for us kids, and I smoked weed with her. I drank with her. We were buddies. She was an aunt by marriage, and she would rent the hotels for us. She would she her pot dealer, we'd get like, a half a pound of weed, and I'd fill up the bathtubs with Bartles and James and beer. She'd buy all the booze for us, and I'd charge, 10, $15 for people to come into the parties. And I got away with it a few times. My dad caught me once.
How did
And
he catch you?
yeah, like I went in lockdown in the house. Like he's like, "You are not going anywhere," and I was like, "Uh oh."
How
So
did how did he how did he catch you, Chris?
I I think he saw a flyer, or a parent called.
You
I
made
can't remember.
flyers? You
I
made
the handwritten ones, and I worked in the library. It was one of my electives in junior high, and I could make copies for free. So I would just hand out the copies, like.
That's hilarious that you're you're making flyers for these parties.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's funny. I can look back and laugh at it now, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, this is, junior high and
Yeah,
beginning
you're
of
not
high
even in
school.
high school yet. You're seventh or
Not
eighth
yet.
grade.
Yeah, and when I hit high school, we lived in this huge old, like 100-year-old home, and we I would have like parties because I knew my dad would be on the road for a while. So my stepmom would leave for work. She'd drop me off at school, and a bunch of this. I hung out with a lot of guys, skateboarding, and we'd all head back to my house, and we'd pull out the liquor in the cabinet in our pantry, and I'd just fill it up with water. After, the vodka. My parents, they didn't drink like that.
Yeah.
That alcohol from their wedding lasted years, and then finally I got busted because somebody came over years down the road, and my dad offered them a beverage, and they said, what do you have to make a cocktail? And my dad was like, I don't know, we got some vodka up in the cupboard. And I go, oh crap, I'm busted. So he made her a screwdriver, and he said, I don't, because my dad's he's never been a big drinker. He said,
Yeah.
I don't make this kind of stuff, so tell me if it needs more or less. And so she tasted it, and she said, well, I taste the orange juice. So he dumped a lot more vodka and switched her to a bigger glass, and she said, now it tastes like watered down orange juice. And I was standing in the kitchen at that time, and he looked right at me, and I was like, oh my gosh. And he just looked at me and he goes, did you fill this up with water? And I looked at him, and I was like, I can't reach that, just straight lied to his face. And I just took off. I just took off. And, it never got addressed. I never got in trouble for it. But my dad, would say stuff like, that stuff will kill you. And I'd be like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. You're crazy. But,
Yeah, that's funny. I never watered down my parents' drinks after I would steal them because I knew that they didn't even know what was down there. You know what I mean? Because my parents are the same as your dad, like not really a drinker. And all those bottles that I found when I was 11, 12, 13 years old were all covered in dust.
Yeah.
They had been down there and accumulated dust. So I would steal bottles of Seagrams or
Yeah.
Captain Morgan or whatever was down there that looked really old. I would take it and hide it in my room. I lived in the attic and I had a
Oh,
really weird steps to get up to my room. So my parents never came up to my room. And, I had a walk in closet. This is a converted attic. So I had a walk in closet that had a window and I would shut the door and put the towels all around it, have the fan going with some dryer lint behind it. And I would sit out my window, halfway out my window, and smoke a black and mild or smoke a cigarette, take
yeah.
shots because I had the bottle hidden in my closet. I would take shots and I was just numbing because of
Yeah.
I wasn't partying yet. I was numbing the pain of the day. And then I started partying when I was 14 and I didn't need to steal my parents' liquor at that point because there was a liquor store in town and next to it was a shady motel with a lot of shady characters. So all we had to do was stand outside, offer one of them $5, fee, and they would buy us whatever we wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a little store down the street from our house at the time where we could send a note and say, "Please sell my daughter 1 pack of Marlboro Red," and put the phone number, and my stepsister would stay at the house, and they never called. But and then you could run tabs, with the little
Oh yeah.
local market and say, "Please put, 2 packs of Marlboro Red on the tab," and we would go in on Friday and pay out of our allowance.
Yeah,
Isn't that something?
I had a I had a running tab with a place called Speedy Mart. It was next to my apartment when I was 20. And I would pay them on my payday, but they would spot me packs of cigarettes
Yeah.
throughout the week and just run the tab old school, just write it down my name and how much money. And the
Yes.
end of the week, I would come in, run my debit card through, and we'd be paid up and tab me back to zero. And yeah, Nasir was his name. That he loved me in there. I would come in all drunk and high, and buy all the munchies that I could grab.
Yeah.
So I know the tab situation and how that runs.
Those were the good old days when trust was the word of trust was a word of trust.
Yeah.
And
No, you're up. I don't. Nobody tabs me anymore.
oh no.
I've tried, and before I moved in our old apartment, there was like a shady gas station, and so I would go in there to buy my cigarettes. And I've tried so many times, being like, "Come on, man, I'll get you back Friday. Like, I'll even leave my debit card with you. This way, you know what I mean? Like trying to earn some trust with the guy." And
Yeah.
nothing. Cigarettes were like $10 at this time. So
Oh wow.
now
Yeah.
they're 11.80.
Yeah, times have changed. Yeah, we have some friends and family. My dad still smokes cigarettes. They bring cigarettes from Arizona. They're still $100 a carton, so that's ten
Yep.
dollars a pack. But
Yep.
yeah, my pops he still smokes cigarettes, but I've stopped trying to influence him to stop smoking because he's been a smoker for 60 plus years,
Yeah.
and that's his little go to thing in his
His escape.
retirement.
Yeah.
And, you know, the man, served our country, drove truck all over the United States. And, that's the only thing that he does. He doesn't drink. He buys cigarettes in cartons at a time and he goes out to the garage, takes a couple drags, puts it out, goes out a little bit later, takes a couple more drags. That's his vice, and I just stopped
Yeah.
saying, let him just be happy. I
Yeah.
can't control it.
Did you go to college or anything when you were done high school?
No, so my dad kicked me out of living with him and my stepmom at age 15. He sent me to go live with my mom because I was stealing cars and sneaking out my window, and they caught on to the drinking. I got suspended from high school for fighting. All kinds of. I was
Wait,
running amok.
you skipped over that really quickly. You stole a car?
I used to steal my dad and my stepmom's cars all the time. My dad, when I was really young, he drove a transporter truck where he hauled cars, lease vehicle turn-in cars. So my brother and I would go to work with him, and so like age 8, 9, and 10, he would have us load these cars and unload these cars. So we learned to drive at a really young age. So, me being the sly one that I thought I was, I mean, when I was drinking, ages 11 and 12, and I wasn't with my real mom, but with my dad and stepmom, I was stealing their cars in the middle of the night, smoking marijuana, smoking cigarettes, picking up my friends, and getting the car back before sunrise. Well, one time I messed up big time, and my dad caught me. He had a brand new Ford Ranger 4-wheel drive truck, and I forgot to put gas in it, and he gassed up the night before I stole the truck, and he busted me. So he kicked me out and told me that
That was it.
I had to go live with my mom.
That was his final straw. Was
That
you
was his
taking?
final straw. I was
And
getting
you can smoke cigarettes in the car because your dad smokes.
well. We didn't smoke in the car. He didn't
Okay.
smoke in the vehicles, which was fine.
Okay.
But you know, um, I was drinking and driving, smoking under the influence of marijuana and driving, no driver's license, late dark nights, in the downtown San Bernardino, driving by a police station in Colton, California, forgetting to turn on the headlights, and my friends, drunk passengers, are like, "Hey, turn on the headlights." I'm, "Oh, duh." And I brought the truck back and got the truck home, like, I think 20 minutes before my dad was leaving for work, and I hadn't even snuck back into my room yet. And my dad opened the garage, and my friend that was spending the night with me, we hid behind a block wall in our neighborhood and watched him start his truck to go to work. And he had this metal box that he put all his driver paperwork in, and he put it on the hood of the car, started the truck because he was a very old school, you start and warm up your car. And when he came out with his coffee, he picked up his metal box off the hood of the car and he felt underneath it. And I was like, "Oh no, it's warm." If that truck was sitting overnight, it wouldn't have
It's
been
not going to
warm.
be warm. Yeah.
So he was looking around the neighborhood and he didn't see anybody. So he left and went to work. And when he got home later, 8, 10 hours later, he said, "Hey, you take my truck last night?" And I was like, "No." And he goes, "Really?" I go, "Yeah, why? I don't have a license. Why would I take your truck?" And he said, "Well, funny story. I gassed my truck up before I got home last night and left this morning, and the hood of my truck was hot, warm, and I only had a half a tank of gas." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh." And he goes, "Get in the house, pack your shit, and get out. I'm calling your mom." And I was like, "All right." I was so afraid of my dad. My dad had never hit me, but just, when he would vocalize,
When
anger,
when your
it
dad talked, you listened.
yes, yes.
Yeah,
And
I get it.
so,
Very stern. Very
very,
stern.
very stern. And, and so I packed up my stuff and I went to go live with my mom and my stepdad. And so I lived
Was the
with them.
stepdad the coke dealer?
No, this is a
Okay.
stepdad like number 7, I think. My mom married. She had been married 8 times by the time she passed away.
We call that a Tarzan when you just go from one marriage to the other, to the other, to the
Yeah,
other.
right.
That's what my wife and I call that because my wife's mom, same kind of situation, relationship to relationship to relate.
Yes.
So we call that a Tarzan in our house.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Yeah, so I went to live with my mom and my stepdad number 7 or 6, whatever number it was. And he said, "If you want anything, makeup, if you need feminine products, shampoo, conditioner, there's a job down the street waiting for you. I'm not buying it." And I was like, "Okay." So I got a job as a hostess at a steakhouse that my mom and my stepdad frequented in the bar area on a daily basis. And I got my first job.
And that's how you got in because you had said earlier you were a bartender.
Yes, that was my entrance to the restaurant and bar industry.
Yeah, I worked in the restaurants for a while when I was like 16, 17 years old, and I was a
Yeah.
busboy and, sneaking drinks in the kitchen, stepping outside the kitchen to smoke a cigarette. This was when I'm old enough now that I lived during the smoking sections
Yeah.
era. You know what I mean? Like kids these
Yes.
days don't even know that,
No idea.
one side of the restaurant was for smoking and the other was not. And it didn't matter the
Right.
restaurant. They was always split down the middle,
Yep.
and there was a smoking section or non-smoking. And I remember always emptying ashtrays and shit like that
Yes.
and making sure they were clean again. They were little glass ones at the
Yes.
restaurant I worked at, and kids that I don't know about smoking sections. And it was great at the end of the night when everybody was gone. You could smoke in the smoking section while you're cleaning up everyone's mess. I
Yep.
loved, I loved it. And then I got my license and I started delivering pizza. And
Oh, okay.
I worked at CVS at the same time. So I'd work at CVS on some nights, or I'd work delivering pizza, put cash in my pocket. My dad would give me money if I asked for it, but usually all my money was getting spent on cigarettes and beer and liquor,
Yeah.
drinking every single night. School nights didn't matter. Like I was
Oh,
gonna.
yeah. I was going to Tijuana every weekend when I got to San Diego. We would take the trolley, or I met a guy early. We started dating, and we were in TJ every weekend, partying like we were 21 at a club. And then on my
You
16th
were like
birthday,
16, 6. I was gonna say, what were you, like 16, 17?
I was 15 at that time, and then on my 16th birthday, my mom, she was married to this stepdad number 6 or 7, I can't remember what number. They were chronic. They had like multiple DUIs. They were court ordered to take antabuse. He would beat her, like physically beat her, and I couldn't handle it. And so my boyfriend and I, on my 16th birthday, got our own apartment. We lied about our age. I was 16 and he was 17, and we lied about our age on our application, and we got an apartment. The rent was $385 a month. We were both working and going to school, trying to get our diplomas. And then we had our own apartment. The lady asked us to be the assistant managers, clean the laundry rooms, and collect the junk mail, and we would get $100 discount off of our rent. And
Nice.
yeah, we were in Tijuana. My friends from Orange County and Inland Empire would come and visit. We would entertain, and then we would take the weekends off or work the day shift so we could party on the nighttime. And it was I when I was 16, I was living like somebody in their early 20s would be living.
Yeah, yeah. You're an early bloomer, definitely, Chris.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I got introduced. My one of my half sisters' dads got out of prison, and I had my niece for my sister, and he wanted to meet his granddaughter. And he came over and he saw that I was so young, living on my own, and he asked me if I wanted to make extra money. And I was like, well, yeah, who doesn't? So he said, I'll be right back. And he goes to his car and he comes back and he throws a brown paper bag, like folded at the top. Tosses it at me, and he said, take this and give me $250 on Friday. That should make you some extra money. It was a pound of weed. And so my boyfriend and I, that became our little side hustle. So we were living life large.
Yeah,
And, we both had new vehicles. We had a killer apartment. We both were working full time. And, life was great. It was easy. It was so easy then.
yeah.
And, yeah, we did that for a couple years. Couple
Did you
years.
finish high school even with all that going on?
I got my GED. I was able to get the GED, and it was rough, but I kind of told myself that I can't not get an education. So I took some ROP classes through the high school, like a typing class, typewriters. And I took they had some word processors. I was learning how to use the newer computers, the DOS programs. So I
Yep.
was doing those classes, and I was working at a pizza place, and also had a hostessing job at Coco's restaurant, and we were selling weed, and we were living a good life. There was no struggle.
When did the struggle start?
Um, well, at age, I was almost 19, I found out that the guy, who I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with was cooking and manufacturing methamphetamine. And
In the same house? In the same
no, no, he was working for a water installation company, and he told me that they had these night jobs. They had to lay all this pipe underground at night, and I believed him. And one of his friends was going through a breakup and sleeping on our couch, and they worked for the same company. His friend called me one day and told me, I want to take you to lunch. I need to tell you what's going on. And so he told me that him and the boyfriend were cooking dope. He referred to it as dope. And he was worried because people started knocking on our door. Like, I would be sleeping and random strangers were knocking on our door asking for my boyfriend. And I was like, yeah, no, he's not here. And I'd shut the door on their face because, if they wanted weed, why don't you just ask for it? I would have given you some. But we never dealt it out of our house. We always went and delivered it. And things were just getting weird. And the friend felt bad for me. So he came clean to me and told me that they were cooking dope and it was getting dangerous. And he was worried about my safety. So I, freak out and called my dad and told my dad, just don't ask me any questions. I need to borrow your van. I need to move. And I need to get out of this relationship. And so my dad didn't ask me any questions. He loaned me his van. And I moved in back to Orange County with my grandma. And I was able to transfer my job with the restaurant industry to a job in Orange County. And you know, I kind of was over smoking weed at that time. I drank, I partied, and then a couple months later, I got a call that the boyfriend had died uh, of a drug overdose. And so that put the fear of drugs into me. I never tried any intravenous, snorted, or smoked anything other than marijuana. But his death, like, shook me enough
Yeah.
to where I didn't want to ever try drugs until the end in 2022. I was hanging out with some guys that I knew that they did like coke and meth. And I was talking to them. I said, drinking's just not fun anymore. Maybe I need to try something different. You guys should give me some of what you guys do. And they were just like, no way, no way. But I was ready to try something different. But they kept denying me of access. And I wasn't smart enough to go look for it on the streets. And so I just kept drinking. And it was probably like when things got really hard, I I was able to raise my kids. I have two kids, a 27, a 28, excuse me, and an 18-year-old. Um, I had a full Monday through Friday, in the office job, and I was bartending 5 to 6 nights a week. Income was good, life was good. And in 2016, I had an elected surgery that there was complication from. And, after my mom and died, I hit the bottle pretty hard for a good couple years. And then I just went back to what I thought was recreational drinking, hanging out with my friends, drinking at the bar when I was working. And I hadn't lost anything, or, nobody ever
And
said,
you had no any repercussions.
no, no. And then in 2016, I was off work for a year and my state disability ran out. And my employer from the office job, came to me and they said, hey, like, what are you going to do? We're still willing to hold your job while you're recovering. Why don't we, fill your position and allow you to collect unemployment and let you, get some type of income coming in? So I said, okay. And so I'm still recovering from this mess up in a surgery. And I had a leg bag, because there was urinary issues. So I had to have a catheter in for like months, and they had to put a stent in my kidney, and it was a long drawn out mess. So in that was, and then come 2018, or just the end of 2017, My dad called me and he was like, "Hey, your bill collectors are calling me. What's going on?" And I was like, "I can't make it off of my income. I have unemployment. I have a renter here that pays me very little to rent one of the rooms in my house. I can't keep up on all my payments." So my dad convinced me that I should move out of Orange County and come stay with him and my stepmom in the Inland Empire and get caught up and revisit, you know, my situation, once I get caught up. And I agreed. So my daughter had already gone off to college. She got a scholarship for soccer and was in Maryland. And my son, I uprooted, a 4-bedroom house, um, put everything in storage, moved into, my son and I had our own bedrooms at my parents' house, my dad and my stepmom's house. And that was in January of 2018. And then in February, I had just gotten released to go back to work. So I was doing part time gigs for Live Nation. I was a VIP supervisor working like, stupid hours, making almost no money. I was, looking for bartending jobs. And in February of 2018, I was sitting on my dad's patio, smoking a cigarette and having a cup of coffee, FaceTiming a friend of mine, planning, my son and I planning to go to Orange County to visit everybody for the weekend. And I'm talking to this girl on the phone, and she said, "Hey, have you been drinking? Like, what's wrong?" And apparently my face went all paralyzed, and I dropped my phone, and I felt really hot, and I had a stroke. I laid down on my dad's cold cement patio ground, and I I I remember feeling a headache, and I remember calling for my stepmom by first name. And my friend was smart enough to hang up the phone via cell phone conversation and called their house phone and said, "Hey, go check on Chris. Something's wrong." And my dad runs to the patio, finds me on the ground, gets me in a chair, calls 911. And my dad, being smart enough, he does the fast test with me, the for potential stroke, and he said that my face, the left side of my face, was drooping. And the paramedics came, and I had just come off of working like a 10-day overnight shift for the concert industry, and we were drinking a lot of coffee, and I just looked at my dad and the paramedic and I said, "Hey, leave me alone. I have a headache. I think I overdosed on caffeine and I just want to go lay down." So the medics, checked me out and they were like, "We don't know." And my face was back to normal, and so I went in my room and I laid down. And later that afternoon, my stepmom came to check on me, and my head was just pounding. And I said, "Okay, take me to the emergency room." And so they found out that I had suffered a massive stroke. And in the questioning from all of the doctors, they asked me, "How much do you drink?" And I, being the smart, remarked person that I am, I said, "As much as I want." And they said, "Well, how often do you drink?" And I said, "As often as I want." And they said, "Well, what do you drink when you drink?" And I said, "Anything I want." And I was just like, they had me on a morphine drip. I had this crazy headache. I was irritable. And I looked at my dad and I said, "Let's go smoke a cigarette." And he said, "You can't get out of bed." And I was like, "Oh, really? Watch me." And I just started yanking everything out of my arms. And I said, "We're leaving." And I went home and laid in bed for like a week. And my sister convinced me to go to another hospital and, get to the root of what was going on, because my family's just watching me like lay in
Die.
bed.
Yeah.
And so we went to a different hospital, and they did a CT scan and were like, "Oh, yeah, this is big." And they admitted me, and I believe I went to ICU shortly after being admitted, and still never came clean that I could have a drinking problem until 2022. So I got real healthy. I was probably at like 180 pounds. I stopped drinking for a little bit of time. I ate really clean. I cut back on my cigarette smoking. I was walking and swimming. I lost a bunch of weight. And then I started drinking IPAs and tequila, thinking, this is the healthier option. And then, it went on to 2022 where I was just like, I kind of just want to die. Like
Yeah.
I, I'm not, I would make all these, bar room, bar stool promises. Yeah, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And nothing. And I was calling my siblings drunk and they were just like, knock it off. Like, pull your head out of your butt. Like, stop calling me. Like, we don't want to hear from you. Like, do something with your life.
I was so done when I was done. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like I woke up on a Saturday morning, February 29, 2020. I woke up, around 9 a.m. and I had the worst hangover. My head was splitting. I realized I drank a bottle of Jack Daniels the night before. And I said to my wife, like, hey, we either need a drink right now or never drink again. And my
wow,
wife's an alcoholic too. And they were like, okay, I'll quit with you. And I was just so beat up. Like, I was going through a fifth of Jack Daniels 3 times a week, 4 times a week,
sure.
drinking 2-liter bottle of Coke a night, that kind of thing, because I needed to have mixtures. I would do to start off my drinking every single time. I would get a double shot of Jack and make a Jack and Coke. That was 2/3 Jack. So, and I always used a big glass. I never used a regular glass. I always use like a 16-ounce glass
Oh, sure.
because everything as alcoholics we do it big.
Big.
We don't skimp. We want to do it if we're gonna do it.
Right.
So I know that feeling of just being like, I can't do this anymore. This isn't fun. It's not serving any purpose anymore. What does your
I felt
recovery look like now, Chris?
Oh goodness. I am gifted the opportunities. I'm very involved in general service work. I have a few
Mm,
commitments through GSR and through Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm a board member at one of the clubs locally for that we hold like 120 meetings a month.
yep.
I'm on the board there. I'm their district committee member through GSR there. I do hospitals and institution panels. Um, I take my recovery as serious today as I did my drinking then.
Yeah.
I the friend that brought me into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, she suggested that I get busy and stay busy with my recovery. And she said, this is life and death right now. Like, this is your shot. You've been given a chance and a purpose to live. And I watched that girl lose her kids in 2009. And when she decided to get sober, I dropped her off at the club that I'm now a board member at for her first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, that bout with sobriety. And so she just kind of took me down memory lane with, how I helped her. And now it's her turn. She's going to help me, and give me some accountability. She suggested a sponsor. So I started working with the sponsor immediately, started working the steps immediately with Alcoholics Anonymous. I moved into sober living because I knew I needed some type of accountability.
Some structure.
Yes, I need accountability and structure. And if I were stayed in the Inland Empire, I was 1,000 footsteps away from the bar, and I was a full time bartender. So I knew I couldn't go back to that. So I moved out of my roommate's place. My stepmom helped me pack up my stuff and store it at their house. And I found a sober living for $150 a week in Orange County. And I picked up my last paycheck and paid my bills with up to what I could. And I didn't know the next time I was going to have an income. And I was introduced to this food pantry locally in Anaheim.
Um, yeah, so it sounds like you're in a lot of different commitments.
Yes, so the commitments, and I always hear in meetings, meeting makers make it.
Yep.
So I attend meetings. I try to go to at least one a day. Sometimes, I'll do a meeting
So,
earlier in the day, and I really enjoy book studies. So a couple times a week, I do, women's book studies. I wanted to address, this year. um, has been a really, really crazy year for me. I was diagnosed with bone on bone arthritis with my right hip in October of 2023. And I was under doctor's care, you know, I couldn't work and all that. And then I thought to myself, I'm going to take care of some routine maintenance that I've been avoiding, you know, for years. Um, you know, we have to go get our checkups, right? And so I was also in February diagnosed with breast cancer. And, you know, life got really, really real for me. I was dealing with chronic pain. Now, you know, finding out I have early breast cancer, and um, you know, I, I didn't ever through this through the times, you know, and the early diagnosis, they wanted to, you know, put me on opioids and narcotics, and I declined all that because I was like, I'm just started repairing my liver. I don't want to destroy it.
Yeah. Yep.
So I declined all that, and I was taking like Tylenol, arthritis, and Excedrin, you know, for pain, just over the counter to try to cope. And you know, I went through breast cancer elected surgery. I went with the double mastectomy route in April of this year, and then in September of this year, I had my hip replaced. And next Friday, a week from yesterday, I'm going to have my revision breast cancer surgery. But I've reflected on this past year. You know, I mean, it's been rough, and I haven't wanted to give up my sobriety date when the times got rough. You know, and getting to more meetings and staying really active with my commitments has really been my saving grace.
Yeah. No, I get it. I don't have any commitments. You know, it's hard to go. There's no NA in my area.
Oh,
You know what I mean? And you know, I love AA and what it did for me the first time I went through it, but you know, I needed NA this time because
yeah,
of my relapse was weed and benzos.
sure.
And I didn't know I relapsed until my wife was like, "You know you're not sober anymore." Because my wife realized I was missing a bunch of my Valium that my doctor had prescribed me. I was abusing my prescriptions that, you know, I had talked to my psychiatrist into giving me, I'm bipolar, so I'm on a couple different meds. And
Sure.
after my dad passed, I talked him into giving me Ativan. And then I talked him into giving me Valium because the Ativan wasn't working. AKA, I was abusing it and it stopped working. So he gave me Valium, which I abused really quickly. And my wife was like, "You know, you're missing a bunch of pills. You're not sober right now." And I was like, "Shit, I'm not sober." Like it was one of those things that like I didn't even realize what I was doing. So when I quit the
Yeah.
benzos April 1st, I said I'm gonna quit weed too and really do the thing. And I went back to I took a month off of work and I used FMLA and short term disability for mental health, and I took off a month. And I went to AA every single day at noon because
Yeah.
I loved noon meetings. Noon meetings are my favorite meetings to go to.
Yes.
And so I started going every day, and I did that for 2 months. And then, because when I came back to work, I said to my manager, "Hey, I need to still go to these meetings. Can I get an hour and a half long lunch break, and I'll work another hour at the end of my shift to
Nice.
make up for that hour?" So I can continue going to these meetings. And she said, "Yeah." So my job's rough. I work for orthopedics and podiatry and wound
Oh.
care, and people and I do scheduling. People never call me in a good mood. You know what I mean? No one calls their doctor having a good day. That's for damn sure.
Right.
So it's stressful, and that's why I'm glad I can't smoke inside my apartment, or else I would go through a whole pack in 10 hours.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, I felt like in AA, I was stifled in what I was saying. I was holding back because I couldn't express my discomfort with benzos, specifically benzos, because CVS kept sending me alerts saying, "Hey, your diazepam's ready for pickup, $1." And you know, I could spend $1 and be high for weeks, Chris. You know what I mean? Like
Oh.
it's not like alcohol where you spend $30, or $15 a day on a bottle
Right.
and be drunk for weeks. I could spend $1. I can all my change in my car and have $1 and use that at CVS and be high for weeks. And
That's
so I
good.
felt like I needed something more. And I found this NA meeting every day at noon. And so now I don't have to go out to a meeting. I'm at my workstation. My work is right here and my laptop's right here. And this is my little podcast. I have my wall behind me of all my stuff. And, a lot of stuff my wife painted. My wife loves to paint.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
so I have a bunch of stuff that, that Fourth Ave sign is where I grew up. And my friend works for the town, and he was throwing away all these. He sent me a picture of a pile, and I said, "Grab Fourth Ave out of there for me." They were replacing all the signs in town.
Oh, fun.
He grabbed me that one, and so I've had it on my wall ever since then. I even have it tattooed on my arm. Um, I moved 30 times in my addiction, 5 different states, 30 times.
Oh, wow.
So, I kept going with myself was the problem, right? Everywhere I went,
You
I
were
brought
there.
with me, and it doesn't take me long. I go to the bars, I find plugs, connections, dealers, do a lot of coke, and because coke and alcohol go together like milk and cookies.
That's
If
what
you
I
do
heard.
coke, yep, you do coke, you're drinking a lot too. It's as simple as that. So, and just like your friend said, like, no, we can't give you this, Chris, because it is a lethal thing that you could dive right into once you get hooked the first time.
I'm so glad they denied me of that. I mean, even as addicts themselves. I mean, one of them died as shortly after I got sober, overdosed.
Yep.
But I'm so grateful that, you know, that I never put my hands on it.
Yeah, because they're putting fentanyl in coke nowadays.
I know. I
And it
know.
gets scary out there right
They're
now. I,
putting it in marijuana
I heard that. It's
and
been 6.5
pills.
years since I bought drugs off the street.
Yeah,
Because
I travel everywhere with Narcan and naloxone.
yep, we have Narcan too.
Yeah.
My wife does recovery Dharma. It's the Buddhist approach to recovery,
Oh, nice.
and they do 2 to 3 meetings a day. They facilitate a lot of meetings. There's an in-person meeting that they do on Mondays. That's in town, and 12, 15 people show up,
Yeah.
and does a meeting every day at 9 a.m., sometimes at 9 p.m. So like they're really into the recovery, just like I'm really into mine. I do my meetings Monday through Friday. I do Gamblers Anonymous on the weekends because I'm a compulsive gambler. I wear many hats. My addiction is the word more, more
No, I get
whatever's
it. I get it.
more whatever's filling the void. That's my addiction.
I get
And
it.
so I do. I found Gamblers Anonymous meeting in Las Vegas. Um,
Oh, that's a perfect place for that.
yeah, I figured if anyone can stop gambling and give me a good message, it's people in Las Vegas.
I've been to some AA meetings in Las Vegas, and I really enjoyed them.
Yeah,
I I
they're
love
really
that.
good.
I really love. I This past year I was given the opportunity to do some traveling. I went to visit my daughter in Maryland and a friend in Virginia, and my brother in Colorado. Um, but everywhere I go, I find recovery.
Yep.
It doesn't matter. There's no reason or excuse, and I mean it's always available 24 hours a day, every hour on the hour online. But in person, I'm more of an in person. I'm okay with online meetings, but my blood flows differently when I'm in person.
Yep. No, I get it. I totally. I wish NA was in person where I live. I wish there
Right.
was. I tried starting an NA group
Uh-huh.
3 years ago in 2021 before my wife got diagnosed with MS.
Uh-huh.
We started a meeting center, and we hosted mental health meetings. We hosted LGBTQ meetings. We hosted NA. We hosted AA. We hosted, what was the other one? My wife did yoga meetings, and we did Al-Anon meetings. You know what I mean? We were trying to get recovery really going, and we kept it going on our own money. We were hoping that we could get donations and get funded,
Right.
but nobody was donating shit. So
Sure.
out of I was on unemployment, so we're putting in unemployment. My dad donated $500 a month,
Oh,
uh,
nice.
and that paid for our rent. and for him it was a write off because we were a nonprofit.
Yeah.
So he didn't mind donating. So he would donate, and that paid our rent every month. But like we had another apartment where we lived, so we couldn't keep it going. We had to let it go.
Yeah.
Medical bills were piling up with my wife's testing before she got diagnosed. So we had
I get it.
NA. Nobody showed up. AA, I
Uh,
would get a few people, but NA, nobody showed.
yeah, it's cool. One of the clubs, or the club that I'm a member at, they this year they welcome all. So, in most AA meetings, you can only identify as an alcoholic.
Yeah,
But it's nice. This club particular changed it to where addicts and any form of addiction are welcome. They're open meetings for any form of recovery. So it's
that's
nice,
really cool.
when you're
Yeah,
sitting in a noon meeting, and a third of the room will say alcoholic, identifies alcoholic, and another part of the room will identify as addicts, and some people just say addicted, and
yeah,
but nobody gets shunned, because
yeah. That's good.
I've noticed, I've been
It's
through some.
happened where I live.
Yeah,
Happened.
yeah, and I don't understand all those bylaws, but I've learned that when you're in an AA meeting, you identify as alcoholic. When you're in an NA meeting, you identify as an addict. And it took me a long time, because I was at an NA meeting, and it told me, because I identified as an alcoholic, that I had to put in $2. I was like, for what? I'm already going to contribute. But my friend later, I was like, oh, that's wrong. But okay, I don't make the rules. I'll just follow them. It's kind of a joke, but a lot of people put the money in, and they're just, their
Yeah.
seventh tradition raises more. But so this club where I get to be on the board, they're all open meetings, and anybody with any form of addiction is welcome.
And nurses too. You guys get nurses out there where they're going through nursing
Yes.
school and they need to come in and AA meetings. I
Yes.
identify I in NA. I identify as an alcoholic and an addict. That's how I introduce myself. JD, alcoholic addict. That's it. Just rolls off my tongue. I am
Sure.
both. In NA, it's in their literature. Alcohol is a drug. Period is exactly word for word what it says. It's in like the preamble stuff that you read. Alcohol is a drug. Period. So I
Mhm.
know there's some days where if I struggle with alcohol, I can talk about it and not be like, why is he talking about alcohol right now? This is NA.
Right.
So it's a really good group. My sponsor's got 30 years. He just celebrated 30 years a few weeks ago.
Nice.
This is the step book. It's a nice book. You have to answer all these questions in order to do step one. It's not like a book study where you can go through the first like three steps in a night. It's
Right. Yeah,
really
no, I appreciate
intense.
that.
And so, I like that it's intense this time around. So, but thank you so much for taking the time, Chris, and telling me everything about what you're doing and what happened.
Yeah,
It's
I like to tell people, I've been under a lot of doctors' cares this year, and nurses coming to the house, and they see my sobriety stuff around my room, and it always raises an eyebrow. And so I get to tell people in the medical world today, hey, if you or anyone you know is ever struggling, feel free to give them my phone number. you know i i I my symptoms have been relieved to where I no longer crave alcohol. But and I live in the solution of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's just nice to be able to 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 give others hope, and let them know
yeah,
that they're not alone. And that's if I can help one person from today until the day I die, like that's my higher power working through me.
yeah. I just did a 12-step call. My friend texted me saying, "Hey, one of my best friends has been an alcoholic for years and is really struggling. She wants to get sober. She doesn't know how. She doesn't like AA. Can I give her your number?" And I said, "Yeah, of course."
Yes.
And at first she was like, I do 10 to 12 airplane bottles of whiskey, or what the hell is it, Fireball.
Oh,
She'll go to the liquor store and buy 12 of them, and then throughout the day do a shot, drink the whole airplane bottle. And when I first started talking to her, she dropped down to 10, and then she dropped down to 8, and now she was at 5 yesterday, and she only bought 3 today.
okay.
So she didn't want to go into withdrawals right away, so she's tapering down.
Smart.
And every time that she drinks one, she sends me a picture of an empty bottle, so I know that she drank one, and kind of holding accountability that way, and being honest with me about, like, here's the 3 I bought, and send me a picture.
That's amazing.
So, and it feels so good to be able to help somebody like that, because I remember when I was broken and needed help to get back on my feet. And when you help somebody, you just you get a new life. Like, you get a bunch of energy from it. And you
A
know
lot.
there's a certain buzz that you get. Like, early on when I was doing this show, I was really disgruntled. I've been doing this for 3 years now, almost three and a
Mhm.
half years. I got 250 episodes. Like, it's been a while. And I was really concerned with my numbers. Like, hey, my numbers aren't where they should be. My show is this. I should get higher numbers. And I'm an addict, so I want more and more and more.
Right.
And I got a message on Instagram one night at like 1 o'clock in the morning, and it was a girl from the UK, and she said, "I just watched 80 of your episodes, and I decided I'm going to go to detox in the morning. Thank you." So that keeps me going to this day, to not care about the numbers,
Right.
because if I can reach one person with each episode, then that's all I care about now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel the same way. I do everything and anything I can. I try to reach out to at least 2 or 3 alcoholics a day just to check in. And, even if I'm not having a good or a great day,
Yeah,
my mind gets busy. I have a lot going on right now, but I want to do everything I can to maintain my sobriety. I don't feel that if I were to relapse that I would come back from it. And the 866 days sober that I have today is is aside of my children and my children being good humans is my biggest accomplishment. And if my story can help one person and or continue to help people, that's where I feel like I found my purpose when Alcoholics Anonymous started making sense to me.
yeah,
And
yep.
I and I'm considering, getting some certificates in counseling and working in sobriety.
Yeah,
Why not do what I love and get paid for it if I
yep.
can?
Yeah, there's a ton of counseling stuff. You can get peer support counselor,
Right,
and work for the county and help people come into the county. Some people are in jail and they need a peer support counselor, as
right.
part of there's a lot of things that we can
Yeah.
do. My wife is looking into doing that next summer.
Oh, that's
And
amazing.
the only class we have in our area is a Monday through Friday for 2 weeks. And I would have to take off of work for 2 weeks in order to do it.
Oh,
So, and it's just tough because I take off during the week a lot to take care of her. So, there's not a lot of PTO saved up for me to do like
right.
the 2 weeks off. But if she can do it, she's on disability right now. And if she can do it, that's something that she loves too. So, but
Yeah.
awesome, Chris. It was great talking to you
You
today.
too. Thank you so much for taking the time with me, and nice to meet you. And I'll be saying some prayers for you and your wife's health. And
Thank you.
this has been an honor. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day.
Bye bye.